Hello, everybody. It is Sue Stiles. I'm your host of Hindsight's 2020. And on this episode, I have Paul Hardy with me. We're going to talk to him about business and life and hindsight. And Paul, when we were chatting, you had said you wanted to create clothes or sew since you've been a very young boy. Tell me that story.
Yeah, well, people often ask me, if I always knew what I wanted to do. And my mother tells me that when I was 3 years old, I used to pull on her pant leg saying, I want to sew, I want to sew. And so I do think it was kind of an innate calling, despite coming from 4 generations of bankers and accountants.
You're the one who got creative, but not just got creative. If I look you up, your website, your social media, your accolades go on and on. You have done shows all over the world: Toronto, Manhattan, LA, Hong Kong. One of their articles said you were one of the top 5 Canadian labels for people to know. You have done collaborations with the Alberta Ballet, with Stampede, artist in residence at the Glenbow Museum. You have dressed celebrities all over North America. People reach out to you and ask for your clothes. Bette Midler, Sarah McLachlan, Alanis Morissette, Kate Hudson, Goldie Hawn. I mean, I could go on and on just from what I have read and heard about you. So you're kind of a big deal now, Paul.
Well, it's relative, but thank you. I appreciate the compliment.
Your clothes, the design, the creativity. So we'll get into that. But initially, when I'm interviewing my guests, I'm an entrepreneur. I help entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, people who work alone, who often don't have a brick and mortar store. And you know that road. You've climbed those steps. And so the first question I'm looking for your answer on is, what have you found is the best way to get clients in business over the course of your success? What would you say have been some of your best experiences?
Well, I've always, really since the inception of my business, have put a focus on dealing directly with clients and just relying on word of mouth based on, the connection that I have with a lot of people. And one of the reasons why I chose to do that was because I didn't want to be beholden to retailers to, in the event that I ever lose them as accounts. So I always sought to direct sell proportionately more than what I was doing with my wholesale business. And it seems to be that that's sort of evolving as a trend right now within the industry, just with the evolution of technology and social media.
And so tell me about how you ended up providing for Bette Midler, because this is what happened here with a direct word of mouth situation, right?
Yeah, it was early on in my career, probably my 3rd season, I think. And I'm not exactly sure how Bette had become acquainted with my line. My understanding was that I think she was filming a movie in Toronto at the time and had first come across my clothes through Holt Renfrew when we were wholesaling to them as an exclusive retailer early on when I first started. And she had purchased a number of my pieces and had her personal assistant actually contact us directly because she was looking for retailers in New York because she really likes knitwear specifically, and that was something that we had started to develop in the second season and has really become a staple to the line. But at the time, I didn't have any stockist representation in Manhattan, because a lot of the negotiations that I was proposed with from different retailers were just a bit too aggressive for me to fulfill. And so it was really, the communication with her personal assistant that led me to think that, I could do these sort of trunk shows directly for people. And so as a result, we would do, like a pop-up shop, which is now a trend, but back then we would do them in a hotel room, and a number of people would come and bring their friends, and I could sell the equivalent of a wholesale order in an afternoon that I would typically do to a store, and I would get 50% deposits, and then the balance when I shipped, which was actually better terms than most retailers were willing to give me.
Wow.
And it established a loyalty sort of following where we could connect. So and so now I have these pockets of clients really all over North America and parts of Europe.
I'm really hearing you. So it's like,
it's been an unconventional model, but it's worked for me to be able to regulate my cash flow, et cetera, because I started my business on a credit card, which I do not suggest anybody do.
Coming from a banker's family, right?
I know, yeah. But, I was in a position at the time where I couldn't get a line of credit from the bank initially. And, I had no other way to finance myself. So that was sort of how I initially did it, which I don't think I would suggest that to fashion students.
Yeah, not a recommendation, but an experience.
Yes,
course.
Exactly.
I mean, it's worked out well for you. I mean, it sounds like, you put your product out there where you could, and when people are experiencing it, then it speaks for itself. So then that's that word of mouth result.
Yeah. Well, I learned a lot. Like prior to starting my own label, I worked as a personal shopper for 4 years for Holt Renfrew, and I got to work directly with consumers as well as, inevitably the competition's product, and to find out why they were buying, why they weren't buying, and how to overcome those objectives or obstacles, I should say. And it, I believe, really kind of curved my ability to feel like I had an understanding as to what women were really wanting in their wardrobes, or at least be able to present an offering that I thought would serve them well.
Yes.
And so that really, was a beneficial experience for me in sort of crafting how, and also from a customer service point of view, because having worked with the consumer, I understood, the importances of things that were of value to them. And I've carried that into my own business as far as, I guess,
it's a
nurturing
foundation.
the relationships that I have with them.
I was just at a big branding conference, and one of the things that kept coming up there was do the research on your clients, do the research on your customers. If you understand what they want and what they need, then you can respond to them. And it sounds like common sense, but in practice, it's not commonly practiced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've always tried to sort of, keep a gauge on that. And I find that, aside from my clients, like geopolitics often are big drivers behind trends as well. I mean, we're seeing that immediately right now with the COVID virus, and
Yeah.
the shift of the social landscape is going to completely change fashion. But, you see that when like market crashes, I mean, people will, the market crash in 87 spurred on this whole very minimalist movement, and, in revolt of the excess of the 80s. And so you see those sorts of trends. But, as a perfect example of how my clients have sort of navigated the product offering that I do, because I've had a number of clients now for almost 20 years, some of them.
Wow.
And so I've gone through the phases of their life of when they had, kids early in their careers, when they were working professionals. A lot of them have gone on to be retired now. And, just the physical changes that have happened as a result of them, having kids or going through menopause. And, we used to do exclusively chunky knits when I first started, that we produced in Ireland and Scotland.
Mm.
And a number of our clients started complaining to me that they couldn't wear them because they were having hot flashes.
Okay, yeah.
And I mean, being a young guy, I was not cognizant to that, and it really made me assess that I needed to diversify the product offering, and we started developing a fine gauge knitwear line that we produce in Italy that can be layered. Specifically, that was the catalyst that drove it. But
Wow. Yeah.
it also works for all ages and for diversity. And so that's just an example of how my clientele has really been the drivers behind what I produce.
Well, those are some really good examples and results. Let's sidestep to some of your worst results, or things that you were maybe going to try or tried that just did not work to help your business.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think now. My third season, it was the first time I showed in New York. I joked to people saying that, it was probably the most expensive marketing kind of thing that I had done. But it was probably my worst selling collection I had ever done. But it also, ironically, was one that was the most meaningful for me, because the collection was, every collection I design has a story and a theme behind it. And this particular collection was all inspired by a story of a woman who had been through a series of negative circumstances in her life and had been marginalized in society. And somebody saw beyond what she had done, and more recognized her for her potential of who she could become. And she was used to change a nation. And the whole point of the collection was to challenge the idea that, are we willing to extend the same level of grace and love that we've received in our own lives to other people? And it profoundly changed the way I personally communicated with people. And I believe that, that was a life lesson for me to learn, in being more gracious and compassionate to individuals, because we all deal with our pain differently.
Yeah.
And no one knows what it's like to have walked in someone else's shoes and why they would have chosen to do that. And to kind of sum up that experience, even though it was the worst selling collection I had ever done, I know of at least of a dozen people that had reached out to me and had said that they had lived with a certain level of shame and guilt in their life for experiences that they had gone through. And as a result of having been understood what that collection was about, that they felt set free and liberated from it.
Wow.
And it was really, to me, I thought it didn't matter. And so it changed how I looked at my work in a way, in that it really wasn't about the sales, which is probably not the best thing to say coming from a banking family. But it was really about the idea of being able to generate an awareness about ideas and causes that I had a conviction about. And so I've tried to use my work as a conduit for that, as opposed to it being for, commercial reasons.
Yeah. You found a way, a vehicle to express a story. And you're talking about, versus commercial reasons. Well, a lot of people do want to just sell product and want to have a magic pill, like, oh, if I just pay for this advertising or this. It reminded me of, you were sharing something about someone wanted to wear or was willing to wear one of your outfits at an awards show, but they were asking you to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that, because that's the opposite then, isn't it?
It was actually for the Golden Globe Awards, and we had been approached by an actress's stylist, and they were interested in a specific dress that I had designed from a collection. I think it happened to be a season that I had showed it at LA Fashion Week. So I think the stylist had maybe been at the show. And in any case, they, wanted this dress, but they wanted me to pay them to borrow the dress for the actress to wear. And, this was back in probably 2005 or something. And so, red carpet was not nearly as even crazy as it is now, as far as like sponsorship and paid sponsorship and that kind of a thing. And to me, I just thought that was insane. I thought I would, I didn't think it made sense to give people clothes who could afford it. I would, as I had mentioned to you before, I would much rather, design something for someone in need. And, if I came across that, then just be supporting people who, really was more from a place of entitlement.
Yeah, it's a market. There's a market for that. So you were telling me, I think it was about maybe the first fashion show you got invited to showcase at. Tell me if it was in Toronto, but you got invited and you had your collection, but you were lacking all of the other nice to haves at your show. Walk us through this experience, looking back on it from now. But I thought that was really interesting how you had faith to do something that
Sure.
you weren't quite ready
Yeah,
for.
I don't have a very traditional start to my career. I was making a bunch of samples in the basement of my bachelor suite apartment at the kitchen table, literally. And, very serendipitously, acquaintance of mine, Kelly Strait, who's a model agent here in Calgary, was having dinner with the fashion director of Holt Renfrew Barbacan, who I was acquainted with from when I had worked at the store. And he was telling her that I was making all these amazing clothes. And so she showed up at my house at 11 o'clock at night, knocking on the basement window, wanting to see what I was working on. And she flew back to Toronto and told the president of the Fashion Design Council of Canada about me. And she flew out to meet me. And I kind of shared a bit of my story with her and showed her some of the collection. And she asked me to open the Ready to Wear shows in Toronto that season. And I hadn't really conceived of that because, I was in Calgary and I didn't, the idea of planning a show, etc., long distance, really, I couldn't have kind of pieced that together in my mind. And so, so more out of necessity than want, I had to just sort of figure out ways to overcome all the obstacles that I saw, as far as I didn't have a shoe designer, so I had all the models wear bare feet, and I didn't have a hair sponsor, so I used scraps of fabric from the collection and made headscarves for all the models to wear. And I didn't have a DJ, so I showed the collection to complete silence, which, very fortuitously, my collection was all inspired by silence. So on brand with the theme. And I don't think it had been done before. So there was this really interesting tension because the models walked up and down the runway to complete silence for 12 minutes. And, if you've ever been in a room where nobody's talking, even a minute or two is awkward. So it was really fascinating to kind of just hear the sounds of, cameras clicking and people easing into the comfort of being in the midst of the silence. And the whole theme was that in the midst of silence, we're spoken to in some way. So,
Wow.
Even though I had done all of these things because I had no other options really,
Yeah.
it resonated with the media, and I didn't have a lot of individuals there, but I think I forgot to mention this, but one of the details was that a client of mine from Holt Renfrew, who grew up in Saskatchewan, was actually really good friends with the then president of Elite Models, and she had called him, and that's how I was able to rally models for the show. And that agent actually saw the collection and, unbeknownst to me, took it upon himself to call all the major editors that they really should come to see the show. So even though I didn't have a huge turnout at my first show, I had every important person in Canadian fashion there.
Wow.
And that was really what launched my career. So it was kind of this amalgamation of divine appointments, really, that had come together to launch my career.
Now, when I look online, it looks like you have 29 collections. I think it's like
we're probably
chapters.
Up to about 36 or something
all
now.
together. Well,
I
love.
don't have them all uploaded. What we did for my 10-year anniversary is we photographed the first 20 seasons, like one look from each of the 20 seasons, with my model muse, Angie Green. And then for my 15-year anniversary, we did the next 10 seasons. So that was 30. And then right now I'm on year, oh God, I guess we're entering the 18th year. Will be in October, I think it is.
Wow.
And so I think when I reach my 20th, we'll photograph another 20 seasons.
Well, I love browsing through them. That the yellow and blue in that most recent collection, I just love the colors. You've got the lamb's laughter too, with the sheep and the fur. And I had to ask myself, like, how do you get inspired enough to make a whole collection? Where does that come from?
Well, as I mentioned, every collection has a story and a theme behind it, and it really can come from the most random places. I could be watching a film or having a conversation with someone, or I read a quote or a book. It really has varied, and then, well, actually, just as an example, a really, I think, funny one was I quite like watching NBA, playoffs. And at the time of this collection, I think it was maybe around 2011 or something, um, the 25th anniversary of Les Miserables was
Mm.
on PBS. And so I kept flipping back and forth between the basketball games and this special concert to celebrate Les Miserables. And so my inspiration for that particular collection was the NBA meets French Revolution. And I kind of juxtaposed these details of, Huguenot peasant type of things with these like sporty details. And so it really
Huh.
varies. And but the underlying kind of visual story of it is that there's a I guess a life lesson that I draw from it as I'm working on the collection. So every single season to me represents a point of learning that I've experienced in my own journey.
Wow. And you have had quite a journey. There was a time when you were not making enough money yourself, eating craft dinner, and yet making $1,000 pieces for people. Tell me about that. How did you keep yourself going through that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the classic starving artist.
Totally.
Like I said, I self-financed for like the first almost 10 years of my business before I took on any kind of private equity. And there were a lot of times, particularly like around the stock market crash in 2000, or the housing crash,
Mm-hmm.
stock market crash in 2008. I mean, usually the first thing to go in any down market is retail. So, one of the uh, reasons why I chose to focus on the luxury goods market is that although they're not immune from, shifts in market fluctuations, they're definitely a lot more insulated than, the masses. And so one allowed for a bit of security in, maintaining a a clientele that could have a fairly stable existence regardless of what was going on in the economy. And two, I'm such a lover of details that in order to do a lot of these artisanal type of things with fabrications and embroideries and all of that, that really is kind of, on a higher end scale, that then those sort of artisan ideas trickle down to more modified mainstream designs. So, but for sure there were times when I really didn't know where my next meal was coming from. And I had mentioned to you that I live my life a lot like Indiana Jones, where when he comes to that cavernous gap and he doesn't know how he's going to get across, and he just runs and the ground forms beneath his feet. And a lot of times I've had to just exist that way, where, relying on the kindness of clients and friends who didn't even, probably were not aware of my circumstances at the time, but, were really like sort of angels in disguise to me, having me over for dinner, or, dropping me off lunch when, I couldn't afford groceries, kind of thing. And so I do, it was, I think the biggest struggle in all that actually wasn't even so much the survival necessity aspect of things, but it was wrestling with the mental idea that I would be feeling like a fraud, that I was selling these clothes, people were seeing it in magazines, and they think that I'm like uber successful when, I barely had 2 nickels to rub together. Right. And that is actually not an uncommon, prospect for a lot of people within fashion. Yeah. And I'm, particularly empathetic right now to a lot of emerging designers in the current marketplace, because with the economy unraveling right now, with what's going on with the virus, fashion will have a long road to recover from, the industry as a whole, because it's a domino effect from manufacturing to, textiles to retail, to the designers themselves. It's really, it's going to have a huge impact.
Far-reaching, yeah. When you were describing how you were feeling, it makes me remember, the imposter syndrome for, I think, just about anyone who's trying to reach a certain level where they're not yet, and you get that, fake it till you make it kind of thing. But there's that time where you have to still serve as you see it in your head, but you're not quite living that reality yet. And there's a disconnect, and I'm sure a lot of people fall short and stop and back up because they feel that disconnect. But would you say you have reached a level where now you want to give back to others? As I know, you have a project for a number of years in Rwanda where you're helping those who have been marginalized and don't have anywhere else to turn. What did it take for that to come about for you?
Well, I had always had an interest in being a breadwinner for missions and charities. My parents are, had always modeled that for us. My dad's very philanthropic. My grandfather, my mom's dad, was incredibly philanthropic. Both with his time and resources. And I remember being at my grandfather's funeral, and a man delivering the eulogy asked who was going to pick up the torch. And I felt like there was this small voice inside of me that, felt that mantle. And so it had always been an interest. And, although I haven't personally made a ton of money to be able to give away, I have recognized that, I've been very blessed to be within the company and relationship with a lot of influential and affluent people. And so I've really found that my career could be used as a conduit to, as I was saying before, generate awareness about causes that I had a conviction about. And, perhaps it was from watching Oprah for years
Didn't we all?
after school growing up. But when she first started doing her work in Africa, that really resonated with me because, a lot of people, I recall her saying that a lot of people were critical of her, not investing in the US. And her argument to that was, well, the thing that's unique about Africa is that there's no opportunity that exists for them. They don't have any social assistance, they don't have any government funding. And what a lot of people don't think about is that, when you have a society that's gone through a political war or being ravaged by HIV, it wipes out most of your middle-aged population, which then in turn causes the economy to implode because you have no workers. And so you literally have a generation of children raising themselves. And even if they do come to an age of adulthood, there's no opportunity that exists for them. And so, I met a number of individuals who, are university educated, and they have to become bricklayers or pick, tea leaves in fields as a means of survival because, the economies in places like Uganda, or Rwanda with the genocide, and then there's also a very layered thing with the cultural aspect of things, where if you've had sexual trauma, at which a lot of these females who have been, they become marginalized by society through no fault of their own. And so we've really tried to focus on meeting the greatest needs that are there. And I've been very fortunate to partner with a woman, Glenda Dubiensky, who is from a dear friend of mine from Calgary, and her kids are grown, and she's made it her life's work to champion the initiative in Rwanda. And she has a master's in counseling, so she's the ideal person for doing that sort of work. And we they've been able to provide for both the holistic needs of the women as well as vocationally train them to sew. And so our long-term goal is to create a facility that's a tangible representation of the worthiness that the women should feel called to. Because I understand the psychology of putting on a nice garment or being, living in a nice space. And I think that there's a way that we can set a precedent for other forms of industry, because I think as inflation rises, not even China is going to offer the cheapest form of labor, which is why I believe they're so heavily investing in Africa right now. And, you know, communist regimes often have questionable social responsibility,
Sure. Yes, I've
to
heard.
put it diplomatically. So that's, you really want to set a precedent for other forms of industry that are going to be investing in underprivileged nations that way.
Right. Wow. How unique to be driven to even bother to find out what's been going on there, to open your ears to the stories that you've maybe heard, and then to feel or take on a responsibility to respond to that.
Well, you know, I in 2008, I had the opportunity to go and build a school in Uganda. It was my first trip to Africa, and I had always wanted to go. And so when I went there, I took it as an opportunity to be like a sponge and really try to learn and observe as much as I could, because I, you know, I try to approach every experience in my life, regardless of what it is. But in this instance, it was, you know, what am I to learn from this experience, and how can I steward to the betterment of other people with my own, you know, circumstances. And so manufacturing seemed like the, you know, the normal response. But you know, if you provide somebody with a job and don't recast a vision for their life, then you're just teaching them to exist in their circumstances. And I really believe that we are meant to have abundant lives. And so, so it was more important to be able to, you know, think about, well, if I were a female and I had children and I had HIV, like all of those things that are connected to it, like how am I going to eat, or how can I go to school if somebody needs to look after my kids? And you know, so addressing those holistic immediate needs allows people to have the freedom to, you know, think bigger and dream higher for their lives.
Right. Which maybe we take for granted here, but you can give that vision. Now, you said abundant lives. This is your motto, right? That is the thing that you remind yourself. I go back to living an abundant life. When you think of that now going forward, you know, for Paul Hardy, what does that look like going forward? You're a fashion icon, you've done interiors, you've done collaborations, you're philanthropic. What is now on the horizon for you as you go forward?
Well, you know, as I become a little longer in the tooth, you start reevaluating your priorities. And you know, the thing, as I've matured, which sounds, this is going to sound a little bit strange when I've spoken, you know, about the importance of relationship in my business, but I haven't really, I guess, honed or nurtured that maybe as well in my own personal life. Or I shouldn't say honed it, it's more valued it. And I think as you become, as you age, you start recognizing the importance of community and the people who you're most deeply connected with in your lives, and who you're going to walk the rest of your life out with. And so, so I've been spending a lot of time thinking about that, and I've actually tried to be more proactive in traveling to invest in the relationships with a lot of my friends who I've had for, almost in excess of 25 years now, and
Mm.
being a part of their kids' lives, and so from a personal perspective, that really is bringing about a lot of abundance, to me. And then from a business perspective, I'm really, when I had my 15-year anniversary, I was really trying to reflect on what it was that I actually enjoy about what I do.
Good question.
Because I wasn't sure if I really loved what I do anymore. Depends on the day. But the thing that I seem to really value, regardless of what the medium is, because as you mentioned, I've had a lot of different creative experiences, is being a visual storyteller. And so one of the things that I'm actually really contemplating right now is how to merge a lot of those different experiences I've had into a singular creative, I guess, vision. And I really have an interest in wanting to maybe go into boutique hotel development. The idea of being able to curate a space where people can come and stay, and they can dine and, shop at, and have a human experience that they then take away, and it becomes a cellular memory to them. I think there's something very profound to that, because it makes them want it's drawing a thread of connection on a much deeper level, very similar to the psychology of clothing. Like a lot of the special orders I've done, have been for very significant events in people's lives, and as a result, I have that connection with them. And I think, being able to curate actual spaces that are destination type of things that they can share with their friends or their family, and go and visit more than one location, I think there could be something really rewarding in conceptualizing something like that. So
How
that's something
exciting.
I've been mulling over, that I'd maybe
Yes.
like to take a stab at in the
Yeah.
future.
Oh, well, we'll have to keep our eyes. Um, well, just then to wrap up, where can we find your fashion now? Can we go onto your website and do a little bit of shopping, some shopping? Where can we find you and your clothes?
Yeah, well, I have a freestanding shop in Calgary, which it seems to move every 5 years to a new location. But we do have one there. And then in response, actually, well, one, to just technology, and very timely because of the crisis going on, we're going to be launching an online shop this weekend, and it will feature a lot of essential self-isolating items like knitwear and long john leggings and shawl scarves, and you'll be able to find a lot of sort of what I refer to as cash and carry items that don't have a lot of fit issues tied to them, which I think is, for people who may have apprehension to online shopping.
Yeah, great.
I think that, you know, it'll have a product offering that are things that they can infuse into or accessorize with their existing wardrobe
Yes.
already.
Oh, I can hardly wait to see. Give us your website address, Paul.
So people can go to paulhardydesign.com. Design is singular. Or if they just Google Paul Hardy, I think my website is the first one to come up. And we'll have our online shopping there. And if people are on social media platforms like Facebook or Instagram, they can find me at Paul Hardy Inc. or Paul Hardy Design on either of those. And they'll be able to source the products that will take them directly to the site there.
Nice. Oh, that's so, thank you for offering that, finally, the online shopping. And thank you for sharing what's behind the man who's created all of the pieces and the stories behind them. It's so interesting to hear others' journeys, and then people can take it personally for themselves. One last piece of advice that you would give to anybody out there who's maybe having a hard time right now in this crisis, from Paul?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it's such a challenging time. I know it's very hard to see through the weeds, whether it's you're experiencing physical health or economic trials. But I think it's just important to really, believe in what's unseen and appreciate all of the blessings that you can find around you, that, haven't gone away. Gratitude really is, to me, one of the deepest things that can prevent your heart from hardening. And is particularly in troubling circumstances. And when you start seeing all the simple blessings around you, that it really can elevate your spirit during, a troubling time.
Well, something like we've never seen before, but I hear that, and what is faith? Faith is evidence of things we have not seen yet, but we have faith.
Yeah.
We're going to come out of this. There's an end in
Exactly.
sight, and there will be better days ahead. And thank you for joining us. And for this episode of Hindsight, I will say that is a wrap. Bye, everybody.
Bye.